Welcome to episode 52 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre, featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, stage managers, producers, and more. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like the podcast, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Diana Cho is a playwright and actor from Toronto. She was really quite gracious with her time because we had some technical issues during our first attempt at recording a podcast, and we lost all of the audio, and so she was kind enough to jump right back in and give it another go. Really generous with her time, and I'm very thankful to her for that. Her show Comfort opens November 24th, 2016 at the Aki Studio Theatre and runs to December 10th. In terms of things that, actually, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you in what I will now refer to as the Lost Podcast is we were talking a little bit about your story about how you came to theater. You were saying that it started with dance, and eventually, could you talk about?
Well, I've always loved to dance. Even as a kid, my mom caught me on a camera where I was sleepwalking. I literally crawled out of my crib and I was just dancing. And then I just crawled back into my crib and then went back to sleep.
How old were you when that happened?
Yeah, I think it's like 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So even then, I just loved to move. And the story that I told was about my mom having a Christmas party at her work, and there was a prize to be given to anybody who could dance the longest. And even though this music was still going and the winner was announced, which was me, I just kept spinning and spinning and kept dancing and dancing. I really didn't care about winning any prizes. I just wanted to keep on dancing. So I think I've always loved to move, but I never, became a dancer because a lot of, I guess, Asian families, I can maybe speak for myself, is that they don't think of arts as a career, something that you're going to make a living out of. So that never crossed my path. I also had scoliosis, so I didn't fit that perfect body form, height, width of being a dancer. So I just thought I'll just do it for fun. But I had an amazing teacher, Catherine Hepner, and she just was so amazing, and I always remember her words that we were all dancing. I was learning all these different movements, and we all, the music played, and there we went. And then she pointed up to the class. She said, it doesn't matter how much technique you have, but if you don't have the passion, then it's, you're missing the magic. So Diana may not be doing all the right techniques and all the right moves, but there she is. Whether she's doing it wrong or right, she's just doing it passionately, and that's the important thing. So I knew then it just enforced to be yourself, to follow your heart, to follow your passion, and maybe you could be doing all the wrong moves in somebody's eyes, but they're the right moves for you.
When you were, you just mentioned about how in your family the arts were not something that it was thought of as something that was a career.
Not thought of it as a career. What
did you intend to do before, when you were thinking about university and things like that? What is it that you wanted to do or you were going to do?
I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I enrolled in English literature at U of T because I loved reading. That's all I knew about university. So I just read lots of books, and then my dad says, well, what are you going to do with a literature degree? And I said, I have no idea. So he goes, well, enroll in either teacher's college or law school. So I started writing the LSAT, and then I was sitting there in the big hall, and the time was ticking, and then I just started coloring all different circles, no matter what the question was. And I just had the epiphany that I don't want to be a lawyer. I have no idea what I want to be, but I definitely don't want to be a lawyer. That's all I know. I ran out of there, called my mom. I was crying. She said, just come home. You don't have to be a lawyer if you don't want to. Let's just talk about it. She's a social worker, so it's all about talk.
That's a very important... I cannot tell you how many people I know or have heard of who they sort of had that same sort of thing. You can be this, or you can be a lawyer, and they went, well, I'll be a lawyer. And they went so far into it, became lawyers, and hate it. So at least you found out before you got into the school or became a lawyer that it was not for you.
Yeah.
But then what did you decide to do?
While I was at university, friends of mine were all taking accounting and business and all that, and they wanted to form a theater company that promoted heritage, to encourage youth to be proud of their culture, be proud of their history. So it was called Kabataan, and they had a playwright, they had a play, they had a director, then everything fell through. And they said, Diana, why don't you write the play? Why don't you direct it? Because you're the closest to the arts in the entire company. And I said, but I don't write plays, I don't direct plays, I read books and I have a thesis.
Yeah.
So I talked to some friends that were in the drama department on how to go about, mounting a production. So the business side took care of all the business, got people in the room to audition, book the spaces, book the places, and we basically wrote the script as a collective, and then I directed it for the first time. And I wanted to find out, wow, this is pretty cool, this is pretty fun. And somebody asked me, I wanted to be a better director to communicate with the actors, so I decided to audition for a play, but I couldn't get it, and I became the assistant director, which was really fun for a show called The Farm Show that was a very multicultural piece by Paul Thompson.
Right.
And that was at the Tarragon Spring Festival.
Right.
And I worked with Colin Taylor, and it was really, really great. And then he recommended me to direct a fringe play that was all in verse. And then the writer-producer said, so, this is a fringe play, so we can't, we have a limited budget. What is your expected fee? And I was, there's fees involved? There's fees. I gotta tell my parents, there's fees. You can get money for directing. So then they made an offer. I said, well, what's your budget? They made an offer, and I said, that sounds fine. And so I directed this play. Then I still wanted to really dive in further. What is it like to stand in the actor's shoes? So I finally got a piece merging that was a play called Worlds Between, and it merged an old mythology called Legend of the White Snake with a contemporary story about a writer and a producer and a mom, and I played the girlfriend. So I had a chance to actually practice and learn Chinese opera, and at the same time be in this play. And the moment I stepped on stage, boom, I had an epiphany. I don't want to be a director. I want to be an actor, and I got to get serious, because I think this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So you studied Chinese opera. Was that what
that
was
under the director?
Under the director.
Because he is a Chinese opera performer.
What did you learn about? Because had you been exposed to Chinese opera before that?
Just seeing performances.
Okay. And what was the difference between your perception of what that was in watching a performance compared to actually like doing it?
Doing it is so much more fun. It is, because you get to move. I was learning, the different martial arts, because there was stage combat involved. I played this mythological creature, which was Lady Greensnake, and it's just so fun. Like the physicality is really fun. Yeah. I didn't do the singing. There was no singing in it, but the physicality was fun, and learning about these this cultural ancient story that's in an opera is hours and hours long, but we've condensed it, and it's a beautiful story. And working with there was another actor, she's from Hong Kong, and learning from her, who is from that culturally through her eyes in the theater in Asia, and learning about the cultural aspects of the play. Right. It was just a really great experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, so you learn that.
So I had that epiphany of
course,
I want to be
yeah.
an actor. So I decided to take workshops, but it wasn't enough. So I decided to go to school, and I was recommended to go to the Lecoq school in France because it was actors, directors, dancers, movers, creators from all walks of life who already have a degree behind them, and they're coming together because they want to collaborate and they want to create.
Had you heard of the Lecoq school before you went there? Never?
Never.
So it was like you didn't quite know what you were getting into when you went there?
No, but it was like I've always wanted to live in France, so that was like a plus.
There's that.
And
yeah.
I spoke some French, and just to be living in a country outside of Canada, I think would be such a unique and enriching experience.
Yeah. So you were at the Lecoq school. How long? Do you audition to get into Lecoq?
No, but basically your first year is an audition.
Oh, okay.
You're on probation for 3 months, and then you're basically auditioning for the rest of the year. So from 100 something, they narrow down the second year to like 30 students.
Okay. Wow, that's quite an attrition rate.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It must have been an intense time, like to think about, but also just to think like, to know that like this whole year is my audition, and at the end of this year, I might not continue. That's stressful.
Well, you couldn't think I might not continue.
No,
you have to say I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue. I have the right to be in this school.
Right.
And I was even warned. Canadians are really nice, so be tough. Like if there's something that when an exercise is presented, whether you understand the instructions perfectly or not, just get up and do it.
What's the biggest lesson that you learned from the Lecoq school?
Make mistakes and enjoy them. Yeah, one of my professors says just make mistakes and enjoy them, and yeah.
I think that's one of those things that I think is one of those valuable lessons, those valuable things to hear. It's because I remember being in theater school afraid to make mistakes, even though they said, there are no right answers, and then on the other hand somebody would say, but get it right, so it was always like you were always worried that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. But I think more encouragement to make mistakes would make it, I don't know, I don't want to say a better experience, but a more enriching experience.
I think that's because it's a theater school about creation, right? About creating your own work. I think if you don't allow yourself to take those risks and to make mistakes, then you're going to be in this box where you can never fully explore the potential of you as an artist and your story as a story out there to be expressed in the maximum, most 360-degree way you can, right?
Right. Yeah. And you were at that school, you were at Lecoq for 2 years. And when you came back, what was it that you saw yourself doing when you came back? Was there a difference between the path that you wanted to take when you came back and the path that you eventually took?
Well, I felt like I didn't fit in because everybody had to get an agent and then wait for somebody to wait for your agent to call you. You go to the audition and then you get a part, or you don't get a part. And I just thought, this is not working for me because all the people that I knew were all from Europe and they were creating companies and creating their own work.
Of course, yeah.
So I called Dean Gilmour. He's Smith-Gilmour. He also, him and Mimi Smith graduated also from Lecoq, and I said, I graduated from Lecoq and I feel out of place. Are you having any auditions? So they were, and they were working on Dante's Inferno.
Okay.
So I basically went in and all we did was play. It was just like school all over again. We had excerpts of Dante's Inferno, and you take the text and you just run with it with another actor in the room. So that was really great. I had a great audition, and I ended up doing the show with them, and it was so fantastic to feeling that you're not fitting into being part of a company that shared the same experience with you. But then at the same time, I also did work the traditional way of how it is done in Canada, where you're workshopping new plays, or you're in a Shakespeare play, or you're in a play that's the traditional way of auditioning and getting cast in a role. So I still do both. I still create my own work, but then I'm also in plays that are either new and workshopping, or classical and remounting.
Yeah. When did you start writing again? Just generally, like you came back from Lecoq, were you writing from the time that you came back, or did you start to write plays later on?
No, well, with Theatre Smith-Gilmour, we collaborate, so we're sort of writing and creating as an ensemble. Okay. So in a way, that kept my creativity and that part of me going. I don't think I ever really stopped writing. You just write in journals. You write whenever you feel like writing, but there was no like specific goal until Red Snow, my previous play, came along, where I had seen a documentary called In the Name of the Emperor about World War II and about the other half of the world that we rarely hear about in World War II, and I was propelled to say, why don't we know this history? Why don't we know these stories? And the stage is my public platform to speak, so I've got to write something. So that was in 1996.
And those stories that we don't know are the stories of people who are not European. It's the story of stories of the rape of Nanjing, the Japanese invasion of China, and all of that. And those are stories that we don't hear because we live in a largely European country. And you just said you didn't know those stories until you saw that documentary.
That was 1996.
1996. Yeah. And so that inspired you to write Red Snow?
So it was about you were going to ask?
No, I was going to ask you what Red Snow was about, and so you please.
So it's inspired by the survivors of Nanjing, and it's about a granddaughter searching for her grandmother's silent story. So since the beginning of time, her grandfather had listened to Chinese opera, but would never speak or never sing. And she knew that it was connected to her grandmother, and she would have nightmares of this opera until one day she said, if nobody's going to speak in this household and it's so dysfunctional, I'm going to go to China and find my grandmother myself. She must be buried somewhere. And so she finds out about the forgotten Holocaust. She meets a Japanese man, and they fall in love, and he helps her find, her grandmother. But they finally find the story by returning home as a couple wanting to start a family, and the grandfather saying, forget it, get out of my house. And them finally finding peace and reconciliation to say that love has no boundaries. So, so it's the story of a forgotten, silent story.
And where did you perform that?
That was at Theatre Smith-Gilmour back in 2012.
So you started writing this, you said, in 1996.
But I didn't get a writing grant. Like, I didn't really delve into it until 2005 because I was busy acting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was performed at, you said, Theatre Smith-Gilmour, and was that part of a fringe festival, or was that just something that you self-produced?
Yeah, under Red Snow Collective.
Nice. And then what happened with it?
Then in the same year, we got accepted into the Shanghai Contemporary Theatre Festival, and that was in November. So we took everybody there. Thanks for all the fundraising that everybody did, and the Canada Arts Council. So we took a team of 13 people there, and it was just a great experience because actually that year, 2012, was the 75th anniversary of the Remembrance of Nanjing.
Oh.
So it was really important for me, although it's crazy sometimes to be in festivals because they pay very, very little money. It was really important for me to have that story there, and it was so beautiful because when we had Q&A afterwards, there was this woman who said, that mother in your play is my mother, and she has the same nightmares, and we're still waiting for an apology. And it's great that I can't believe that you're in Canada, you made the story, and you all come here and you speak the story and perform the story, and it opens up a way for us to begin to heal, because we may never get an apology. There may never be a closure. We have to find one for ourselves.
Yeah. So that documentary that you mentioned was like the name, In the Name of the Emperor was the name of the documentary, was the beginning of your inspiration for Red Snow. what was the research for it like?
Well, I was sitting in a dentist's office, and I came across an article about Alpha education, and Alpha is the Association for Learning and Preserving World War II History in Asia. And I went, aha, there's somebody who wants to talk about it. Because during that time when I was trying to talk to the community about it, nobody really wanted to talk about World War II, because why do you want to dredge up the past, the pain, and the tragedy?
Right.
So it was very difficult. There was not a lot of research material except for Iris Cheng's The Forgotten Holocaust, The Rape of Nanking. So I contacted Flora Chong, who's a main organizer in this amazing organization, and she read my play. She loved it. They became one of my supporters. And every year, they've stopped now, unfortunately, because most of the survivors have passed away. They take educators from across Canada and Australia to China and Korea to meet the survivors. And that includes the comfort women and all survivors of World War II, learning more about World War II history in Asia, visiting all the different places of importance, of massacres, of medical experiments by the military, the Japanese military. And that was such a humbling and precious experience to meet the survivors firsthand and talking with them and, hearing their story like live and feeling their pain.
Yeah. I mean, there is no real comparison with hearing somebody tell their story. It's different than reading it. In terms of learning their stories, was it hard to find the people who've been comfort women? Was that a difficult thing for you to locate them?
Well, through Alpha, so through Flora, through that tour with educators, they set up all these meetings to listen to the testimonies of comfort women, of World War II survivors, of ones of chemical warfare, the whole range. And then that was in 2009. In 2008, after speaking with Flora, she set up an interviews with me by connecting me with a professor in Nanjing. So I had a phone number. I got there. I called him. He set up these interviews, and it was just amazing. So I met a woman. We call her Mama Shah, and the last time people went on that tour, she was basically going blind from crying all the time, because the pain is still so deep within her, and this is, over 75 years. And she took me we went to her home. I sat there. She gave me her hot water bottle to keep me warm, and I'm trying to push it back to her, and my hands were frozen, and she was just so welcoming and so open to talk about her story, and I was just so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And then I also met a man named Mr. Chang, and after interviewing him at a cafe, he said, "You still have time, because I really want to take you to a special place." And he took us to Swallows Rock, and Swallows Rock is a place where many massacres happened, but nobody really knows about it. So the Japanese military would pack truckloads of people and tell them that they were going to be free, and take them to Swallows Rock, which is a cliff, and then have them walk off the cliff into the icy waters of the Yangtze River. And so many massacres happened there. And I was so grateful that he took me to sites that are not on the historic map that we may all know about. And when he escorted us to the bus to go back to the main city, the heart of the city, downtown, I just broke up. And I just cried for half an hour on the bus, nonstop. It just totally overwhelmed me and affected me from his testimony to him taking me to this place. He said that he watched his mother being bayoneted by a soldier, and as she lay there dying, she heard their baby brother crying, and asked him to find the baby brother. And he found his baby brother crawling on ice. So it's snow on top and ice on the bottom. So he would crawl forward and slide back. He brought the baby back to his mother, and the mom breastfed the baby till she passed away. So from that moment on, I named my play Red Snow, because I saw the whole place, and I saw this baby, and I saw the whole place and the chaos, and this frozen moment where this baby is just crawling back and forth on the snow, and I realized that the snow is probably not white. And so I named it Red Snow. Before it was called so many different things, from rage because I was so upset about it, to pain, to silence because nobody would talk to me, and then finally it became Red Snow.
It's been very powerful to present that both here, but then to take it to China and have it performed there.
Absolutely.
Now, when did you start working on Comfort, which is the play that you have coming up?
Right after I came back from China, because I discovered funding in an envelope to write the next play, which was such a blessing. So they wanted me to write about, my proposal was to write about the grandparent story from Red Snow. And eventually, while I was writing it kind of morphed into something else. Because what if she didn't die? What if she lived and survived the war for 8 years? Because in China, World War II actually started in 1937, not 1938. So it became not a sequel, but an entirely different story, and it became about a comfort woman. So that she was not only raped once, but becoming a comfort woman, and how she survived, and how she was separated from her dear friend and love, and what happens when they get back together, and how they survive.
And that's comfort is that, and I mean the term comfort woman is something that when you first mentioned it, I don't think I understood what that meant.
That's the term that the military used, and it's so. It's basically, the comfort women hate that word.
Of course they do. And it's basically somebody who is forced into
sexual
slavery. And this is something that happened that we don't hear about. And
I think it's starting to be more more prevalent in the media. There's movies, there's more books, more literature now on it. There's the Chinese Comfort Women, which is the book I discovered in 2014, which veered me towards writing about the comfort women, because I realized a lot of people, even people on my team, thought that the comfort women were only Korean women, because they are so vocal. Some of them live in the same place in the House of Sharing, and they've painted and found a place of healing, and people come and visit them, and share their testimonies. But in a lot of places in Asia, all the survivors are all segregated. They have no place of healing. They have nobody to talk to. And so I wanted to give voice to their stories. So it was great that this book came out. It was a book that took, I think, over 10 years to collect all these stories, and to have the women repeat their stories, so that it was, that that the memory was clear, and that the facts and everything were accurate. So I decided to give light to those stories. People don't even know that there were Dutch women who were also comfort women, because Indonesia was a Dutch colony during World War II.
It's sort of highlights the importance of telling the stories, even ones that are not. We love to tell heroic stories, and we love to tell stories that have a happy ending, and we love a certain type of story. But with history often doesn't have a happy ending. But if we don't tell the stories, then they get forgotten, and it's like they never happened. It's really important to work that you're doing with this play.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I always, even though it's tragic, I always bring a light of hope, and the hope also is not only in the characters, but hopefully they reflect us as humanity itself, the choices that we make.
When you said that when you started writing it, you were thinking of Comfort as a sequel, but how long was it before you started veering away from it as a sequel?
After the first draft, because my director, who was the was the movement and music director in Red Snow, this is his directorial debut, William Yong. He's directing it, and he said, "There's a lot of repetition in this story to Red Snow, and it's because it's the grandparents' story, so it's very interconnected." And he said, "Just wondering, just a thought, what if it's another? What if you had something else to say about love and war and World War II? What else would you say?" So then, that book crossed my path, and I thought, what if that grandmother or that woman, that young woman, never died after the first time she was violated? What happens if she had to survive 8 years of it?
And that is that. I mean, and Comfort is not just that; it's a love story as well.
So two teenagers separated during the war.
Yeah. What was it like taking that into workshops? And because you said you were saying in the Lost podcast that you did 2 workshops. What was it like seeing this play come to life? Was it different from when Red Snow came to life? Was it a different experience seeing it or hearing it?
With Red Snow, I took more of a traditional route where you have the text and you have actors gathered around a table and there's talking, and then you might you'll start to put some scenes up on its feet, and then you give the script to the music composer, and she or he goes away and writes the music for it. In this one, I just did it in a totally different way, where I wrote the script, but I used movement and music, working with live musician, working with the composer in the room with a dancer and an actor, and taking that bits of the script or words or themes and seeing what happens with the music, what can be created, what kind of music gets created, if people are moving, how does that inform the music and vice versa. So it was really great, because even though the musicians are not used to moving, they're so attached to their instruments, so there was some security issues because they're not used to that, but they were really great and opened up and tried new ways of exploring music through movement, and then going back to their instrument and then jamming, which was really great. And it was such a beautiful experience where we created a lot of music. Sometimes it would be a word that was dropped or a movement that was created, and then that would propel the musicians and the music composer to create something. And I remember one piece that they created, I just saw the moon, which is a character, like the moon in the sky, is a character witnessing the war, and moon is also the bringer of the lovers together. So I saw the moon witnessing, and a whole monologue came out of it, of moon witnessing humanity, the atrocities of war, and a monologue came out of the music that I heard, which would have probably not happened. That monologue wouldn't have been born if it wasn't for the music that was created, that was ignited by the movement, that was ignited by maybe one word from the story.
It's amazing how much music can affect a situation like that, like theater and like working like that, and live music especially, when you can have somebody working with you to develop the music and that, how that affects movement and things like that. Comfort has live music in performance?
Yeah, we have a musician playing accordion and piano, and then Erhu, which is a Chinese violin, and a percussionist.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That's wow. Because it sounds like the kind of story that I'm trying to, the way that you've described it is so vivid, that I'm trying to see, if you had recorded music, it would work. But having the musicians there adds so much to any live performance that I've got to think that it's got to be hugely affecting to have that like to be in an audience and see that happen.
Well, they're not only playing the instrument, they're also usually using their voices as well. So when we were workshopping it, we were working with a voice coach, and musicians usually are not using their voice. So it was very exciting and scary for them because they're used to being quiet.
Yeah.
So when they were asked to, evoke the sounds of the soldiers, of the landscape, it was just very, very exciting, challenging for them. So I'm excited because they're not only using their instruments, but they're using their bodies and their voices as the instruments as well.
I can picture how that was at first. How did they take to that after a while? How was it difficult to get the musicians to embrace the movement and the sound away from their instruments?
They all had varying degrees of, as actors, we do crazy things. We'll like crawl around and we don't care what our voice sounds like, whether it's pretty or not, right? So I think that might have been a little bit jarring for them, but then at the same time, I think they felt it was like really freeing as a musician to go, I can experiment with my voice. Cool. I think I want to get into this. So I think it just opened up new avenues for them personally as artists of expressing themselves, which at first was scary, but I think was invigorating and a really growing experience for them.
So that was your first workshop with the musicians and actors and a dancer?
Yeah.
The second workshop, that was focused more on text?
Text and actors, some movement. So it was more on the text and the actors. And then we brought the musicians in for a few hours to repeat some of the music for the presentation because there was not enough funds to do the whole thing.
There never is. And so now, as we record this, you are a month away from opening this show, and you start rehearsals for it on Monday.
On Halloween.
So we are recording this on a Wednesday, and so just a few days you're starting to rehearse it. How does it feel? Are you excited, nervous? How this thing you've been working on for so long is now about to...
I think because I'm also a self-producer, so it's also crazy there. So I feel a mix of feelings. I feel really exhilarated giving birth to a new story and seeing it come to life with actors and music and everything. And at the same time, I'm also terrified because, will the story, how will it all work out, and how will, finding the rest of the funding all work out. So it's a mix of terror and exhilaration, I think.
When you were doing your workshops, did you do a public presentation or an invited presentation?
Yeah, so in spring 2015 last year, we had a workshop presentation with public, Pay What You Can.
Did that give you a sense of how, it's so hard with workshops to know because you don't know how it's going to change the next time or what's going to happen. Did you get any sense from it about how it was being received?
I think people were very excited about it. I know it also caused controversy, which is exciting because you want people to talk, you want people to get engaged in conversation. So, I remember one was about what about the soldier's point of view, and the soldiers and the officer they have. I wanted to portray them at their. These are boys who were, teenagers going to war and not knowing what they're getting into necessarily, and having to been trained so intensely with, probably an abusive training and doing everything in the name of the emperor. So I took that account, but the story was the voices of the women. It was about the women, and if somebody else wants to write a play from the soldier's point of view or from the officer's point of view, I think there's a lot of hero stories. It's time for the heroines to be honored.
Absolutely. Does every story have to be about the men? And I say that as a guy. Haven't we told enough stories? Haven't the guys dominated things enough? You were that controversy. Who was presenting that controversy from that workshop? Was it
one of the audience members just asked about the soldier's point of view of how that can be brought out more intensely.
It's always interesting during a workshop. Some of those Q&As can be a little bit fraught because there's always going to be somebody who their feedback is more about how they would have written it, and which is always like, right, but I wrote this one, and if you want that story, you should write that story. But you have to take that sort of graciously. Did you expect that like feedback that was going to be more along the lines of like, I think you should have written it like this, or what were you expecting versus what you got as part of the workshop?
I wasn't really expecting everything. I mean, I'm very open to dialogue dialoguing, and I think bringing up questions, and I may not always have the answers to, but bringing up questions just makes people think, makes people feel, people go, well, yeah, maybe I should write a story from their own point of view of how they want, whatever they want to express, or but then it can also inform you as a writer about characters and development, or what parts of they didn't understand, what parts excited them, what parts didn't. So it's, you always take everything, they're not the ones that are creating the story, you're taking different aspects, but you may not always follow the recipe, but it's always good to listen. Right, yes. You don't necessarily have to follow their same recipes.
No. It's interesting because I've often found in workshops that I usually know what I need to, if I'm doing a public presentation, I know what I need to know because the audience told me when we performed it or when we read it. The Q&A, I often feel like I have to direct a little so that it doesn't get too out of hand, but it's good that I think you have a healthier view of audience feedback than I sometimes do.
No, not
necessarily. No, I think that I sometimes feel a little bit like, I have to do a Q&A, but I'm a little bit resistant about it. But it sounds like I think I would aspire to think more like you in terms of getting the feedback, just to be able to take it, accept it, and maybe there's a good idea, and to at least look at it and hear it. With this show, starting rehearsal on Monday, how has it changed? So you've had 2 workshops.
Yeah.
Are there things that have changed a lot since you started your first workshop, or are there themes that are the same? Were there new themes that you discovered during the workshops?
I think the storyline is clearer, especially in Act 1, of how we get into Act 2 for the main characters. So I think more of the characters have been volumized, have a more well-rounded development. And in the first one, the boy and the girl were together, so they ran away together.
Yes.
And then they were hiding in a house that got converted into a comfort house, and they got separated into 2 rooms. Well, that's no longer happening because I just didn't know how I could help him survive 8 years like that.
No, that is legit.
I just thought I tried my best to keep him alive, but no, putting them in that situation, and then of course the officer would know that they were originally together. Yeah. And in the beginning, it was about, these 2 people care about each other, and I'm going to do this and separate them and torture one and watch the other one suffer. Because a lot of times the military did do that, make people suffer, make families watch their daughters being raped. But how long could that go for, in which you go, this kid's no useless to me, I might as well just kill him.
How do you keep him alive for 8 years exactly. So ultimately he's not part of the house.
He's not part of the house, but he finds out where she is located.
And these are important things that you probably wouldn't have learned if you hadn't had workshops, really, because I know there's something invaluable about sitting down with actors and musicians and a director and like learning and talking about things and seeing how things feel and how they work. workshops are so important. We were talking about the workshop process and how things have changed from your initial script into the to the current version. I can imagine how much you must be looking forward to, and also maybe being nervous about that first performance. How do you you've got a great cast of people, you've got some great musicians. Even before you're starting rehearsal on Monday, what's your feeling as you head into that?
I feel like I wish I had more time as a playwright to just literally be divorced from the reality world, so I can totally concentrate and take each single character and go through that whole journey again and really flesh out things. But because I'm trying to balance the producer with the playwright, it's really hard because the producer is very demanding and has this mountain of paperwork, mountain of everything. So I mean, I guess I'll have to do that when I'm inside that process and rehearsing and I start changing things. So that's exciting. But I just feel like, there's always not enough time to be fully prepared for the first reading, Yeah.
I think that one of the hardest things that I've had to do as a playwright is to embrace imperfection and to just sort of accept that the play is what it is at the time that we start rehearsing it. And I could keep messing with it, but at a certain point actors have to learn lines and things have to happen, and so you have to learn how to just let go and let it be what it is, even though you kind of want to just make it perfect and keep working it. But I think no work of art is ever perfect, and that's kind of what makes it art.
That reminds me of this saying. One of my musicians is also a dear friend who plays the accordion and the piano, Kathy Nasati. Because when I'm in that zone, she always reminds me of Leonard Cohen. Only with a crack does the light shine through. So you can't have it perfect because the light won't shine through. Right. So I was trying to remember that, but because when I was working on the previous draft number 7 this summer, and sometimes when you do work on it too much, it just becomes like, oh my gosh, because when the director saw that draft, he goes, "What are you doing? Why are scenes missing? Why is this at the beginning of the play now?" And I go, "Because I didn't like it, and because I moved it there." No, Diana, we just workshopped this twice. We've had discussions about this. You can't suddenly. So you can't we workshop this, so you can't just everything away and then just do whatever. So you have to have why are we taking away this? Why did you move that back to where we discussed it for 10 minutes where it shouldn't be there anymore? So
it's funny because I think that as writers we always want to keep perfecting and fixing, but then I think there's a point at which you can actually perfect the life out of the piece because things are, like, it's meant, art is imperfect, like I said, and so when you start making it too perfect, then it doesn't breathe and it doesn't live in the same way that it did when it was just not quite right.
Yeah, when you're trying to glue all the cracks together, there's no light shining.
There's no light shining through. So, Comfort opens at
November 25th to December 10th.
To December 10th at the Ecole
Studio, which is the Native Earth Performing Arts inside Daniel Spectrum, which is 585 Dundas Street East, Parliament and Dundas, which is in the Regent Park area.
And it's produced by Red Snow Collective. And you guys are on the web at
www.redsnowcollective.ca.
And social media, you are
Facebook Red Snow Collective and Diana Cho, TSO, as in Toronto Symphony Orchestra.
And what about Twitter?
I am
Are
on
you on Twitter?
Yeah, Red Snow Collective is
Right.
on Twitter.
And you? Diana Cho, are you?
No, I'm
so
under
you're
Red
just
Snow.
under Red Snow? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Red Snow Collective.
Red Snow Collective. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This has been fun.
Yeah, it's really great.